Such an exciting subject, to be honest. And I'm just looking at my clock here now and I'm thinking 20 minutes, I can speak about this for days, but we'll really synthesize this information as much as possible. I think the purpose of this webinar is really to just give you an indication, not just what you can expect in the course if you're interested in that, but just, where are we at this point in time and what does it really mean in terms of real estate analytics and our profession overall. Now, when you see real estate analytics, it sounds very sophisticated. It sounds very nice in reports. And when you read the reports and you read about analytics, your mind wonders, what does it all mean? And as a matter of fact, it's actually just processed data. That's really what analytics is, and it's all derivative. Now, we will touch on this slightly later, but it's all part of a collective process in how you go about obtaining this information, which really ensures the quality of the information. And when we talk about real estate analytics, in the end, it's truly actionable outcomes. That's the emphasis here, because you can't just produce analytics for the purpose of just, producing analytics. It always has to have a specific target and a specific outcome that we're trying to achieve. And the only way you get to that process or to get to that outcome is to follow a systematic data collection process that is outcome based. So it's all about the interpretation and the analysis of information and then synthesizing that information into a workable form in which we can make decisions. So in the end, analytics it shouldn't be daunting. It's very exciting, actually. It's purely derivative from data. And even though we can talk a lot about data in terms of data types and data characteristics, we won't touch on that today. It's more on the data science and the statistics side of things, but it is embedded with when we try to understand what we mean by analytics and fundamental in that sense. So obviously we're just going to skip the data collection part for obvious reasons, but let's talk about data and data interpretation. And the way we like to talk about it is at the hand of this spectrum. Now, a full disclaimer here, there's no predefined real estate data analytics spectrum. Much of this will be very familiar if you have a statistical background to some degree, but for those who do not, we'll cover this in a bit more depth. But the spectrum is purely here to illustrate that you've got, very complex data. With the advent of AI, IoT, big data, there's so much information that's collected and stored on a daily basis, which now, for the first time in a long time, we can actually go and extract that information and use it within our financial models. So we've got complexity, high complexity on the right-hand side and low complexity on the left-hand side. So the complexity of the analysis depends on the complexity of the data, but there's no predefined real estate analytics spectrum per se. When we start with, let's say, basic information or basic data analytics, basic data descriptive analytics is all about looking at history and answering the question, what has happened? Diagnostic analytics take this a step further, where we look at the causality. Why has this happened? When you look at the predictive analytics, how much of the historic trend are we actually going to see going forward, or how much does it deviate from what we've seen throughout history? And then prescriptive is bringing it all together: basic, intermediate, and advanced, descriptive, diagnostic, and predictive, to produce the optimal outcome, all things considered. So let's just put innovative and visionary on the side for a moment, but it's truly about combining all of this information to fully understand your data. Because when you understand the data, the quality of that data compounds in your analysis and eventually your outcomes. The innovative and the visionary side of things is a bit more real time. We've got now access to information which we previously didn't have access to. For example, in a property, if we were modeling a property in a DCF, we now have information in terms of energy usage, which is much more granular. But in its raw form, you can't really use it by itself. It needs to be correlated to something that you use as an input variable within a model. Now, that complicated analysis is obviously subject to the tools that you're going to use. Now, Excel is a staple. We all know that. We conduct DCF analysis in that. It's good for basic functions and basic functionality in terms of data processing. It also has limitations. But then you also have object-based programming languages like Python and R, which is much more advanced. And these days we can integrate these to something. We've got a specific module in the course where we integrate Python into Excel and do advanced analysis. there's so many opportunities now to enhance the inputs that we use within our models. And then just data on the side, it's something I've used in the past. It's very econometrics. So some of you might be familiar with it, especially if you're still at university. Um, it's very econometric, academic based, and not really giving you the information integration that you would like if you want to incorporate it with other pieces of software. But then the exciting part of it, but I mean, we can talk about all of these tools on the right, for hours, but AI is evolving so much, and we've got so many tools coming out that I think, in principle, the most important thing is not to know how to interact with ChatGPT, which is most well known, or Perplexity. Perplexity is really your research AI alongside Gemini, among other things. And many of these tools actually overlap in functionality. So the key skill going forward into the future is actually understanding that these tools respond to a specific methodological approach. Now, at Bayfield, we've developed a 10-step best practice approach to AI prompting, which can be applied to any tool, because it's all about the principle and how you interact with these tools. And that's truly where the skill is. And from all of these tools collectively, you can take that raw, you can obtain data, you can analyze data, and then synthesize all the information using it in a sequential process to actually produce, let's say, a structured data set or structured information onto which you can then act. Now, this, I probably should have made this image a bit smaller, because given AI and given the advancement that we now have in techniques, the time associated with following this entire process is actually, completely shrunken down. But it's important to note that every single step, the same way that a growth rate compounds over time if you make an investment, the quality of what you do at the start of this process compounds towards the value at the end of the process and the actual insights that you actually obtain. So you first start with your collection of your data. It can either be manual. These days you can automate it, with AI and with software. You'll analyze the data, extracting the insights that you want from it, then use your own human factor, and we'll touch on the human factor at the end, to interpret this information for valuable insights and then consequently act on that. But I can't stress this enough. Each of these components have actually steps within steps. So even though this is like the top-down view of collective execution, the only way you get to your desired value is following the sequential process, in a high quality nature, from collection through the entire process, and that gives you the optimal, the information to act on, in terms of analytics. Now, this is I've actually obtained this image from an article on LinkedIn, Future of Job Reports, and I think we need to look at that top right corner there. And this is not just a plugin for the course, but I think we're all aware that AI and more sophisticated approaches to real estate and the industry as a whole is truly, taking flame, and really taking off. And as you'll see, we've got AI and big data there at the top. And then we've got here at the bottom right in the blue dot, analytical thinking. That's where the descriptive, predictive, diagnostic component of data science feeds into understanding your data. You need to work more with data and work more with these tools to develop an analytical mindset in terms of the information that you want to extract from the outcome that you want to achieve, and the information that you actually want to extract from this process, so that you can make that better informed decisions. And then you've also got systems thinking here at the bottom, was also a nice little now that means it's that blue circle. It means a lot of things, but that's the sequential process. Effectively, systems thinking is systems work based on a sequential process. It's a logical process of binary numbers, and if this happens, do this. If this happens, do that. It's not much different than one of our sophisticated rent review functions that we have in some of our DCF models here at Bayfield. But in principle, it follows on top of one another, and that is going to be in demand. It seems to be, the foundation of the future of our industry. And then I just want to finally touch on, the human factor. In my experience in asset management and investment banking, and even in real estate and throughout all of my studies as an academic, not so much on the sporting side of things, the human factor is fundamental here. AI is not going to replace your job. It's definitely not. And the reason why I say that is I conducted an exercise the other day, very simple structured data set. And I asked both DeepSeek and ChatGPT, who's renowned for analyzing data sets as well, to provide me with information on it. And multiple times I found errors. So AI is error prone. The human factor in terms of due diligence, let's call it the ethical side of things. You can't be sipping pina coladas while AI is doing your job. It's just not going to work that way. So the human factor, you as an individual, still incredibly important. Your experience, your intuition, and how it applies to this entire process is what generates value, and not the AI tool in itself. So analytics is just another word for outcome-based data processing. And now that we have so much information out there, it's really transformed the entire landscape, and it's become an absolute core skill